Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about breaking down the big topics, and today we are prying open the operating manual for the U.S. Congress.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start at the very beginning, with the Constitution, where Congress gets its power in the first place. Then we'll dive into the nitty-gritty, the rules, the key players, and even the rivalries that shape how our laws get made.
All right, first things first, where does Congress even get its authority? Well, it all goes back to the Constitution.
And the answer to that really comes down to two different kinds of power the Constitution lays out. We're going to start with the ones that are spelled out clear as day.
So these are what you call the enumerated powers. Think of it like a job description written by the Founding Fathers. It's the official to-do list for Congress. Things like raising an army, printing money, setting up post offices. The stuff that's literally written down, right there in the text. No ambiguity.
Okay, but what about all the things that aren't spelled out? I mean, the world changes, right? Well, that's where implied powers come into play. These are the powers Congress needs to actually do all the jobs on that list. And their authority comes from one single, super important line in the Constitution.
And here it is. This little line is famously known as the Elastic Clause. Why? Because it stretches. It gives Congress the flexibility to do whatever is necessary and proper to get its job done. It's what allows it to adapt to changing times.
So the Constitution gives Congress all this power. But, and this is a big but, it immediately splits that power between two different chambers. And that split, it pretty much shapes everything. Let's take a look.
On one side, you've got the House of Representatives. We're talking 435 members here. Each one represents a specific district, and those districts are based on population. That's why people often call it the People's House. It's designed to be the chamber that's closest to the voters.
And then on the other side, you have the Senate. It's a much smaller club, only 100 members. And the math is simple. Every single state gets 2 senators, whether it's California or Rhode Island. It's meant to be the more deliberative body.
Now, this difference in size and who they represent, it's not just for show. It gives each chamber its own exclusive powers. The House, because it's the people's house, gets the power of the purse. All money bills, taxes, spending, they have to start in the House. They also have the power to impeach, which is like bringing charges against a federal official. But the Senate gets the final say on some really big stuff. They get to ratify treaties with other countries, they confirm the president's appointments, think cabinet members and judges, and this is key, if the House impeaches someone, the Senate holds the trial.
Okay, so think about this. Thousands and thousands of bills get introduced every single session of Congress. How on earth does anything actually get done? Well, the secret isn't what you see on C-SPAN with all the big speeches. The real work happens in the committees.
And here's a reality check about Washington. The vast majority of those bills, they're destined to fail. They never even get a full vote on the floor. Instead, they get sent to a committee, and that's where they quietly die.
So this whole committee system is basically about dividing up the work. You've got your standing committees. These are the permanent ones, the workhorses that handle the big policy areas like agriculture or defense, year in and year out. Then you have temporary ones like select committees to investigate a specific thing, or joint committees with members from both the House and Senate. But the one you really need to know about, the one that can make or break a bill, is the conference committee. Right, so this is where the real legislative sausage gets made. Imagine the House passes a bill. At the same time, the Senate passes its own version of that same bill, but with some key differences. Now what? They're at a standstill. That's when a conference committee gets created. It's a temporary group with members from both chambers, and they have one job and one job only: hash it out. They have to create one single unified bill that both sides can agree on. And if they succeed, that final compromise bill goes back to the House and the Senate for one last, simple up or down vote. No more amendments.
Okay, so we've got the structure down. Now let's talk about the people who are actually calling the shots. Who's in charge? These are the congressional leaders, the ones directing the whole flow of lawmaking.
Over in the House, it's all about the Speaker of the House. This is arguably the most powerful job in all of Congress. The Speaker controls what bills get voted on and when, decides which committees get which bills, and oh yeah, they're second in line to the presidency. Then you've got the majority and minority leaders, who are like the chief strategists for their parties, and the whips, whose job is literally to whip up votes and keep party members in line.
But the Senate, totally different story. Technically, the vice president is the president of the Senate, but that's mostly a title. They only show up to break a tie vote. The real power?
The person who actually runs the show is the Senate Majority Leader. They control the entire Senate floor. What comes up for a vote, what doesn't. It's a huge amount of power.
All right, last but definitely not least, we need to talk about one of the most powerful, most controversial, and frankly, most misunderstood rules in all of Congress, the Senate filibuster.
This is where everything we think we know about majority rules gets thrown out the window. Because in the Senate, just getting a majority of votes, well, a lot of the time that's just not enough.
I mean, it makes sense, right? There are 100 senators. You get 51 votes, you win. That's a simple majority. And sometimes that's all it takes.
But then there's the filibuster. This is a Senate tradition that lets a single senator, or a group of them, talk for as long as they want to literally prevent a bill from ever coming to a vote. And because of that threat, a whole different number becomes the magic number.
And that magic number is 60. To stop a filibuster, you need what's called a supermajority. You need 60 senators to vote to invoke cloture. That's the official term for ending the debate and finally, moving on to an actual vote.
So think about what this means. This rule, which by the way is not in the Constitution, it's just a Senate tradition, it completely changes the game. It means a single senator can grind things to a halt. It gives the minority party a massive amount of power to block the majority's plans. So for most big, important pieces of legislation, you don't need 51 votes to pass it, you need 60.
So there you have it. From the huge powers laid out in the Constitution, all the way down to this one quirky, powerful Senate rule. That's the basic blueprint for how Congress really works. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. When a tool like the filibuster gives so much power to the minority, is it forcing healthy compromise, or is it just creating more and more gridlock?